My name is Alain Mulder, and today I will present about the Global Economics Conditions Survey. But before I start, my compliments to the organization of this conference. It's really a superb one, so I really enjoy it, and my colleagues as well, so congratulations on that one first. So today I will present about the survey, and as you see, this is not something we are doing alone. We do it each quarter together with ACCA, and why are we doing it together with them? Is because we are joining forces, we are strategic partners, IMA and ACCA, and we do many things together, and one of those things we do together is a lot of research. Of course, you can also connect with me via LinkedIn. I do share a lot of the research IMA is doing on my LinkedIn profile, of course also on the profiles of the IMA itself. So feel free to connect with me. Also, later on, if you have any questions, of course you can ask them today during the presentation. But if you have a question in your mind a few days after the presentation, always feel free to connect with me and ask the question. Of course, what are we going to do today? The most important one, like I said, I will do an update on the global economic situation, and as we know, many things are going on at the moment. Of course, also an outlook, so what is going to happen in the future. Of course, it is a prediction, because we never know what's going to happen, especially these days. And then I will cover the 6 megatrends of the finance profession. So what is impacting our profession at this moment? And of course, the transformation itself, the controllership function trends, and how we can deliver value as a company itself or as a profession. And then maybe the most important one, how to prepare ourselves for the future of finance. And it sounds easy, but it's not actually nowadays. First, a little bit about IMA. I will not cover too much time on this one or spend too much time, but who is IMA? Well, IMA is the Institute of Management Accountants. We are a non-profit organization, and we are the largest association focusing exclusively on the management accounting profession. We do have 140,000 members around the globe, and we do a lot of research, a lot of other things to help finance professionals develop themselves and to maximize their careers. On the other hand, we are also helping companies to upskill their finance departments. We are also the organization behind the CMA program, Certified Management Accountant. That's already around for 50 years. Actually, this year we are celebrating 50 years. And I do know that also students are joining us online. We offer scholarships. So if you want to do the CMA for completely free, just send me a message and we will make that happen. So let's go into the Global Economics Conditions Survey. It's the largest survey in its kind globally. We do it each quarter and we ask our members, ACCA members and IMA members, which are combined, I think 500,000. We ask them, what do you think the economy is doing? How is it impacting your company? And what do you think about the future? And that turns out to be a really good predictor of GDP growth. And we don't have a lot of that at the moment. So next month, or later this month, we are also updating the survey again. So I will drop it, of course, on my LinkedIn, or you can just go to imanet.org and download the PDF, and then you have the full report. You also don't have to fill in your contact details, so don't be worried for any emails after that. So, the survey itself. There are 3 things we are covering in the survey. We give a global perspective, a thematic perspective, and also a regional perspective. And if we go to the thematic section, that's really the trends influencing confidence, for example. So then we look into the confidence index per region, but also globally. We do the orders index, so how much are companies still ordering. the capital expenditure, so how much are companies investing in long-term assets like real estate, software, etc., and also the employment index. So, first, the major takeaways. Because personally, I don't like it when I have to wait for a full presentation before I know anything. So the major takeaways of the Global Economic Conditions Survey are actually three. There is really, the first one, it's really a point of decisive deterioration in the global economic condition at the moment. That's really something we are seeing among the line. The other one is that the fear indexes are actually little changed. So that's actually a bit weird because we are in a really uncertain period at the moment. And then the third one, it's actually all about the Brexit. It's far too early to analyze the impacts of the Brexit on the economy of the Eurozone, but also of the UK itself. But what we do see is that the export from the UK didn't change actually. But it all shifted from small companies to the bigger companies. For small companies, it's way too complicated and way too expensive to export to the Eurozone at the moment. So many of them simply stopped exporting, and the bigger companies are taking over. Another prediction given by the UK Trade Organization, which is from the British government, they said that the impact in the future of the Brexit will be 15% difference in GDP growth between the actual situation of the Brexit and if they stayed in the EU zone. So 15%. Of course, it's a prediction, but that's quite a lot, of course. So these are the indices. It's a lot to consume, but what we do see is that the capital expense and the confidence is much lower globally. So people don't have a lot of confidence in the global economy, which is not surprising, of course, and also the investment in long-term assets is really going down. And of course, there are two big reasons for that. It's of course the invasion by Russia of the Ukraine that is really impacting the economies, not only in Europe, but also on a global scale. And the other one is COVID, of course, especially in China, where we have the zero COVID policy and many cities are in lockdown. And that will also impact us in terms of economy, but also uncertainty in the supply chain. So let's now do the regional picture. So I will zoom in on 5 regions, the US, Eurozone, Southeast Asia, China, and also Africa. So let's start with North America. Of course, there we also did a survey, and what we see there is that the confidence is really low. It's actually lower than when the pandemic started. So that's actually a big surprise. It's also different than the other regions. And the employment market is really very strong still in the US. So that's a bit of a weird combination because the US entered into a recession this summer, and normally then you also see that the job market is going down, but that's still not the case there. When we look at the indices itself, we see that the confidence index is at a 10-year low at this moment. Like I said, even lower than at the start of the pandemic. And the US entered into a recession, but it will be a weak recession, most likely. So not like what we saw on television in 2008 when we had the financial crisis. It will not be like that, most likely. So there will be a period of very weak economic growth. So what we saw in the past with GDP growth, maybe even double-digit or a few percentages, that's not something we are going to see in the upcoming years, or upcoming year at least, let's say like that, in the US. So if we go to the next region, that's Asia Pacific. What we saw in Asia Pacific is that actually all the indices are lower compared to last year, except the orders index. So confidence is really low, the unemployment index is really low, and also the capital expenditure. But companies are still ordering, so they have confidence probably in that their company itself will still grow. If we look at Asia Pacific as a region, it's actually, in terms of all those indices, it's the best performing region globally compared to all the other regions we surveyed. So that's, of course, a really good thing for Southeast Asia. And also something to remember if you do business with that region itself. I already mentioned the zero COVID policy. That's really something we see in China at this moment. What we see in China happening is actually two major things. So we have the zero COVID policies with many companies in lockdown, but also, or actually cities, I have to say, of course also the companies, but mainly the cities. We also see a real estate crisis happening at the moment. So maybe you saw it on the news, there was a big boom in the real estate market in China, but that's really going down at the moment. Of course, the financial crisis in 2008 also started with the real estate crisis in the US, but the ripple effect of what we see in China is very unlikely to hit the rest of the world. So that's, of course, a good thing. And if we now zoom in on our own region, the Eurozone, of course, we all see it happening on the news. High inflation rates throughout the Eurozone. We see, for example, here in Poland, I believe it's around 17%. Also in other countries from the Eurozone, in the Netherlands, it's 70%. Switzerland is not part of the Eurozone, of course, but for them, inflation was not really something they were used to. But even there, they have inflation at this moment. And how did that happen? Well, of course, it's a result of the fiscal policy stimulation packages from the governments during the pandemic. They supported the economy because it was really going down the drain, as we all know. That was a good thing, but one of the results is, of course, that there is now a lot of inflation. Of course, it's a combination of factors, but that was, of course, also a part of it. And on the other hand, the energy crisis. I'm not sure if you are concerned about your monthly energy bill, but I always check it now once a month. What is the bill? I never looked at it, but mine doubled. So that's really something concerning, of course, and that's also something we see in many countries. And that will stay for quite a while, because what experts are saying is this is not only something happening this winter, but it's very likely also going to happen in the next winter. So in the end of 2023. So, confidence in Europe is still a bit above pre-COVID, but it's lower, of course. Not as low as what we saw in the US, that it was much lower, even lower than at the start of the pandemic, but it's still low here in Europe. But I think you all recognize that. And the big part, of course, the situation in the Ukraine, we don't know what is going to happen. Many things will happen most likely, and that will impact, of course, also the economy of the rest of Europe. And a lot of uncertainty, of course, in the market as well. So, if we now look at the UK in focus, I already mentioned what's going to happen with the Brexit. That is impacting, but they still have some GDP growth in the UK, but also a high inflation. Now I would like to zoom in to the Middle East, because probably most of the people assume that they have a lot of oil and gas in the Middle East, so inflation will not hit that region. Well, in terms of oil and gas and energy, that's true. But the Middle East is very dependent on Russia for other commodities like grain and other things. And that is, of course, now also very expensive. So also in the Middle East, you see a lot of inflation at the moment, but with another reason. And we see the biggest fall, the biggest drop in confidence for all the regions. So in the Middle East, they really don't have a lot of confidence in GDP growth and in the economy as a whole. So let's now go to summarize this one, the confidence index, of course, the orders index, they have the biggest fall in that compared to all the other regions, and that all has to do with the dependence on Russia for the commodities, which are not related to oil and gas. Now I would like to go to South Asia. We already did Southeast Asia, and these are the indices as well. So it's no surprise, also here it's going down. So what you really see happening is that in all the regions across the globe, the confidence in the economy is going down, order index is going down, basically everything. And that's a difference to the Middle East. Here the inflation is really caused by the increasing oil prices. They're really dependent on that one as well, the importing oil and gas. And now we go to Africa, and there is actually, that's really interesting at this moment in Africa. So what we see in Africa is that the growth rate of GDP is still good. The economies, most of the countries in Africa are growing, but on the other hand, that is not really positively impacting the unemployment index. Because what they really have for an issue is upskilling their staff. The people there, the employment market employers, they really have to upskill them in order to take advantage of the technology trends, the transformations happening. So that is really impacting the employment in Africa. So GDP growth is not outbeating the unemployment there. So for Africa, it's really important to upskill their staff. It's the same as, of course, in all the other regions, but especially for that region, it's really important that they upskill all their staff in order to take leverage of all the transformations going on. And then when we go to the final market, which is all the emerging markets combined, then we also see that there's not a lot of demand for products coming from those markets anymore. So they, of course, have an issue also with their GDP growth. So let's now go to the outlook before I go to the trends in management accounting and the finance professional in general. So what are we predicting for the upcoming months, upcoming years? And in the past, this was maybe an easy part. Just do some calculations and we see, okay, this is GDP growth, this is going to happen there, but it's not that easy anymore. And this is also where the finance profession comes in, because they have to prepare their companies for what's going to happen in the future. And last week, there was a research published by KPMG. It was called the CE Outlook. It was also a global research, and there were a few very interesting findings. So what they say is that 80% of all the CEOs anticipate a recession in the upcoming 12 months. That's maybe an easy prediction because we already see that happening in the US. But 70% of the CEOs believe that the recession will disrupt their growth. Well, that's maybe the definition of a recession, but it will really impact them. But then it becomes interesting, because actually it's not an in my backyard problem. They do think that GDP will be impacted, but not for their company. So that's interesting, of course. The rising confidence in the long term is still very good for their own company. And many CEOs, CFOs are already taking action. There is a hire freeze going on in 40% of the companies. So 40% of the CEOs are saying or telling the company that they are doing a hire freeze. So that's, of course, impacting the unemployment market at the long term. And 46% of all the CEOs are seriously considering downsizing. So that's, of course, also something what will happen probably in the upcoming months. And that will, of course, impact consumer confidence as well. So last week, I was scrolling on one of the finance platforms, and the most popular course offered by that company was cost cutting. I didn't see that for years, I must say. Normally, it was about trends in finance and all those things, but now suddenly cost cutting was number one. So, inflation, inflation, inflation. That's really our thing in the upcoming months. Oil prices, we don't know what's going to happen, but you can be sure, I think, that they will increase. There will be supply chain disruption, of course, because of the situation in China, but maybe also because of other things. We all saw what happened with the major vessel in China or in Egypt. That can indeed disrupt as well. So, what are the things at this moment? It's all about transformation. We are at this moment, and it was also a topic of other presentations early today, we are in an era of transformation and a lot of uncertainty. Like what they said, the VUCA world, that's really happening at this moment. Transformation and uncertainty. And actually, that is where the business partner, the finance business partner comes in place. They are sitting on all the data. They know what's going to happen outside of the company. They have that helicopter view over the company, and they can really advise the senior leadership team from their companies, the boards, where are we heading and what kind of measures do we need to take. So it's really also a big opportunity for the finance professional to change themselves a little bit in order to be that business partner. So, what is the state of the profession? I think most of these topics are already handled today also by others. So at the beginning of each year, our CEO, Jeff Thompson, he's president and CEO of IMA, he is predicting what kind of things will impact the finance profession this year. It's of course not a prediction, he's really doing a lot of research on that. But of course ESG, maybe that's the most important one, because if we don't handle sustainability, then all the other things don't matter anymore. But also remote work. And that is not a surprise, because we all did it. Many of us still do it, or at least a few days a week. But one of the things many people don't know, and this is proven by research, that fraud cases go up within companies with remote work. And there are many good things about remote work. Personally, I like it as well. Not all the time, because that can be very boring, but at least a few days a week. But when people work full-time from home, they feel less connected with the company. They don't see their colleagues, they don't see the nice company logo anymore when they park their car in front of the building. So they feel less connected. And that is really impacting fraud cases within companies. And of course, cybersecurity is really important when many people work from home. I was listening to a presentation from a cyber expert a few months ago, and what he said is that criminals who want to enter a company illegally, they don't go to the company network. No, what they do, they go to the solar panels from the people working from home, because most of those solar panels are connected to the Wi-Fi. People are working, using that Wi-Fi also to work from home. The password from the solar panels is still admin or welcome123, and it's really easy to access via the solar panels the company networks. Personally, I don't know how to do that, but IT experts, of course, know how to do that. So that is also something which is now on the plate of CFOs, and that's really impacting our profession as well. And then you can think, yeah, but cybersecurity, that is something for the IT people. Well, maybe how to solve it is for the IT department. But the risk and all the things that can be damaging for the companies, it can influence the brand, everything, and in the end also the revenue of the company. So this is really something nowadays also for the finance professional. And also what research is showing, and that was also actually by the KPMG research, is that 70% of the CEOs and CFOs really see an increasing demand by their stakeholders for ESG reporting. So their investors, but also other stakeholders, they really want to have an update on the sustainability of the company. So, how to deal with all these things? I said it before, it's really about upskilling. So if you want to be relevant as finance department within your organization, if you want to deal with all the transformations happening and what you see here on the screen, and by all the uncertainty happens, or which is happening at the moment because of the economic and geopolitics, you have to upskill. So it was also early in the presentation today by Rita, given by Rita, is that I believe 40% of the people, they already know a little bit or even more about sustainability reporting. Well, that's already a good sign. People are developing that, but we need to do more in that field as well. So, transformation is maybe the key word, of course. That is really key for staying in business as a finance professional, but also as a company. So, last week, I had a meeting with the CFO of a large Dutch pharmaceutical company, and they are constantly in a finance transformation. And their staff actually asked at that meeting, okay, are we almost finished with the finance transformation? Because you are already talking about it for a few years, and we already have all those projects going on. And his answer was actually very bold, and he said, we hardly started. There are much more things coming up. It's not ending today. It's not implementing RPA or AI, and then we are done with the finance transformation. No, there's much more to come. And actually, it's really exciting. So in order to stay in business as a company, you have to do the finance transformation as well. Most likely, you will recognize these figures. This was a Bloomberg simulation tool, and there you can fill in your job, and then you see how it is impacted by automation. And this is actually in the US, but for Europe it's not much different. And this is for public accountants, so for auditors. And 94% likelihood that it will be impacted by automation. For controllers, that is less. I believe it's around 50%, that same figure, but there's a big but. So it's not like, okay, it's less, so we can wait and it's all nice for our job. It's not like that. We have to change into that finance business partner. And we need to know how we can leverage technology for our company. If you cannot do that, yeah, then you are among the people who will be impacted by automation. And many times you hear stories that automation will make certain jobs redundant. And then, of course, that doesn't sound nice. I believe that the World Bank, they predicted that 94 million jobs will be lost due to automation globally. But on the other hand, a little bit over 100 jobs will be created because of technology. So in the end, it's creating more jobs even. So that's a good thing. But of course, we need to upskill ourselves for that. So how prepared are we for the finance transformation? So here you see it. This is the research we did. 62% of the people say that their controllership function is not prepared, or is at most a little bit prepared. So that's quite worrying, to be honest, that figure. And then they really looked at things like technology enablement, data analytics, governance, compliance, and delivery models. They zoomed in on those functions to see, okay, how prepared is the controllership function. And we looked into several regions. And then that is good news for us, because Europe is the best performing one. Though this region is really the most well prepared for what's going on. But in that 83% are also companies who just started. So it's not, oh, 83% of the companies are prepared. Unfortunately not. They just started or they somewhat started. So it's all about talent at this moment. It's not a surprise, but developing your talent, also make sure that you have a diverse team in your finance department. And then I don't mean only where they are coming from. That's really important, that you have a good mixture in that, but also in mindsets, that you have different mindsets within your team, different backgrounds, because it is proven that if you have a good diversity level, that the outcome or the net worth of your company is 10% higher. So it's really something which is important for the success of the company. And of course, technology. I already mentioned it a few times. This is really something we need to leverage in order to be efficient and to deliver insights within our company. This is really where we can deliver value. And of course, a transformation. But that's, I think, the magic word of today. So, before we go to the questions, we can do that, of course. We're looking forward to that one. I really want to say that you can also visit our booth today, because actually you can also win something really nice. So I really would recommend to go there. Also, if you like Formula 1, which I personally do, and I had a very good day yesterday, of course, then you can go there. This is what you can win, the Remarkable. It's 600 euros. It writes like paper and it feels like paper, and I really like it. So if you have the fastest time, then you go home with this one later today, or tomorrow, I must say. So really visit our booth, I would say. So thank you so much. And if there are any questions, yeah, please let me know.